Hello, my name is Bennett, and I will be doing a breakdown of our last chapter, chapter 10 of Smartest Kids in the World and how they got that way. So let's begin. So first, we need to ask ourselves, why? And I feel like Amanda Ripley's target audience in this one is students who already feel betrayed by the education system in the United States. And my target audience is literally the GOAT, Mr. Fulton. So I'm gonna send this to Mr. Fulton. And you may ask, why? Why Mr. Fulton? Why students? And I feel like Fulton is a really good fit for the target audience because Fulton is a teacher who really encourages people to actually try, and students who feel demotivated can feel motivated because, especially when a teacher enjoys a subject that they teach, especially if it's an AP course, it will be far better for them. And I feel like that's what sometimes students need. So I feel like Mr. Fulton is a really great example of this, also because he is not an AP-like teacher. So let's get to it. So basically, 3 students came back home: Kim, Eric, and Tom. They all had a bright future if they pursued that college degree. The stakes were staggering. A decent job, and without a degree, they were more likely to raise kids alone and actually die faster. It became a gruesome reality that the fate of Americans was hard to manipulate. A system of tracking long implemented created a system where paths never intersect. Another woman arrives as Tom left Poland, here to open a factory that supplies the breadsticks to places such as McDonald's and Pizza Hut. Paula, the woman opening the factories. Modern factories, as she states, now required skilled artisans with critical thinking capabilities. When the job now required a lot more than what the job description simply meant. The Bama companies also had trouble with finding good candidates as well. Most of the workers that were nominated came into the job without knowing basic math, let alone be able to read. And besides that, let's go back to the 3 kids. Then we have Kim. She finally returned from Finland and started her online high school journey. She seemed to long the freedom of educational autonomy. Kim watched videos on her given curriculum, and she could message any teachers at any given time. But it was only her first day back. Ripley met up with Kim and asked her on the second day that if she was afraid to become isolated. But Kim reassured Ripley that American high schools have always encouraged isolationism. Kim was placed in a program called Advanced Academics, but the company behind it reported $2 billion in revenue in 2011. You could probably do the math in this one. And now, was free market really free market if no one knew the quality of the product or even agreed as to what the product should be? Now, Oklahoma recently implemented a new system. Seniors without any special accommodations had to take and pass 4 out of 6 end-of-the-year exams. Students with a diploma were expected to know basic math and reading skills. Some argued that this was actually child abuse, but it was common for the kids in Finland. Hence, they even wore suits and dressed nicely for exams, which is something that probably American students would never do to a test. And in the end, less than 5% of the kids who took those exams in Oklahoma ended up failing. Even after such low pass rates, protests continued to persist. And now we go back to the second character, or rather the second person, Tom. So when Tom made it home, he also missed his sense of freedom to smoke, to drink, to stay out late. He missed that feeling. He packed his bags and left to the state of New York not long after. But once he made it to college, students there came from expensive schools in the Northeast. They understood stuff that Tom did not. So now we're going to our last person, which is Eric. So Eric came from like a really good background. So he pretty much came over prepared when he went to college. Many of his peers were never taught how to structure a clear argument, let alone clearly convey an idea. He adapted easily and moved to the classes he enjoyed. Grades from this point didn't really matter to him, but the rigor in the courses mattered to him a lot. And now we go on to this other girl who is going to be important, and her name, a Korean woman named Jenny. She came back and forth to Korea and to the United States. She was mostly amazed by how easy classes were in the United States. One day she was taking a test, and a teacher even helped the students, quote unquote, systematically cheat during class. And now she wondered how that student would have done on the SAT with protractors watching her every move. However, as competitive as they are, one thing that we also are very competitive on is the fitness test. And if you know, we do not like those tests. And it was as if we were going to train for the Olympics. Why couldn't we do the same for academic courses? Jenny knew at the end of the day, in order to pass, hard work must come first, and these are the principles that the Korean education system has taught her. So, let's go a little back. One thing to note from Finland, Korea, and Poland is that they agreed education is a serious matter. And it was a more serious matter because everyone agreed it should be. One thing American high school sports do is that it's all competition. Or rather, one thing that really connects all three of them is that it is all competition. America, in a way, was more about parents showing up with a pull-out chair to cheer on for their children's sports. The ambition from Korean high schoolers to work hard in the end were drained once they arrived to high school. The hamster wheel Korea system was more brutally honest and prepared their students that there is always room to improve. Compared to the moonbounds, which is America's system, where students were lightly pushed and taught that there would be second and even third chances in life. As Ed Miliband puts it, if you want the American dream, go to Finland. And in order to give the best education, we have to prioritize the rigors of education. In reality, the three countries that made it to the top was to be happy and prioritize the struggling of failing, and that is what education is all about, trial and error. In 2024, Oklahoma implemented the Common Core state standards, but it was protested as it gave too much power to the federal government. According to the protesters, when Kim, Eric, and Tom finished a year of American school, there was no common ground on the topic of academic rigor. And now let's introduce another person into this chapter, William Taylor. He was a traditional public school teacher, and he was a math teacher as well, who was taught important things from his principal. Instead of sending students out of the classroom when they misbehave, find more engaging approaches to it. Schools are not only good kid factories, they are learning factories. Taylor believed every student had potential. They just needed to hustle for it. He switched to a more troubled area of DC and taught there for a bit. He taught with strategy, strategically placing students in a group to work together. One day, a girl got an F and questioned Taylor, but he just stated that she earned the F, not given an F. She began to work up from an F to a D, then to a C. It was all the girls' work. And at basis public charter schools, there's a system and an adaptation of the PISA exam. The students from those areas scored above average and topped many students from other countries. And this is like a visual example of it, of how, because it's the basis public charter schools. And in another school in the region actually scored below 22 countries average, not meeting high critical thinking skills in any category. If the students do not realize their failure now, then in their future works, they may realize it way too late. And I ask you to kind of consider this. The stories from Korea, Finland, and Poland are a reminder that change is possible. The education of our children matter more than ever before. And to aspire living in a system that encourages to think not for us, but for the world. And that is what this whole chapter is basically about. And now I ask you these 3 questions as our last breakdown of the book. What are some ways to combat those who are opposed of an academic reform? Why is it important to encourage rigor, even at the expense of our pride? How should we, as the future leaders, encourage the idea of trial and error to the future generations? And with that, thank you very much for listening to my series.